Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us here at Security Live from reInvent 2024. My name is Brian Mendenhall. I am the worldwide head of Security and Identity Partnership Specialist Organization here at AWS. I am so excited for this show. I am here with Himanshu. Himanshu, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Himanshu. I lead the team of our security and identity specialists. We help customers and partners orchestrate native AWS security services along with partner tools to provide better security outcomes for our customers. And we are joined today with one of our partners.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. My name is Trevor Milestone. I run our cloud partnerships at Securiti AI. That includes, obviously, AWS, but also increasingly cloud and SI ecosystem partners. Really excited to chat.
Welcome, Trevor. And for the clarity, it's Securiti.ai.
Securiti.ai.
Awesome. Just curious, I was looking at the notes and we had our first conversation. Curious what made that name? What was behind the journey of the name?
Yeah, well, our CEO might be the first person to say it. Might be a little ill-advised at this point because of where we've gone. So we are a data security company, so foundationally, that's what we're doing at the core. But we've extended into a number of different areas, but security is at the heart of everything that we do from a platform perspective, which is the genesis of the name.
Awesome. And I'm assuming that the AI portion of that is how you are automating security and bringing better outcomes faster and sooner.
Definitely. Even stepping back, if you look at the core platform, security is a data command center. What exactly that means is a lot of different things. But if you think about the market and the big driver and need for the solution, there's this massive growth in data itself, but also the number of services and systems companies are using to generate that data. So obviously, you have cloud providers like AWS, but you also have apps like MongoDB running in AWS. Companies also have on-prem data centers. They have dozens or hundreds of SaaS tools that they use. So what we do is provide a centralized platform to bring all of that data into one location. And how that extends into AI, we can get into a little bit.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, that's super exciting. It's I think right now is really a super hot time when it comes to data in general, especially being within AWS. We have availability zones and regions all across the world, so we understand the importance and complexity of data when it comes to protecting your data, and that has been completely accelerated with the advent of AI, generative AI specifically. So I want to hear how are customers figuring out with my data strategy, how do I securely build generative AI applications on top of that data?
Yeah, so if you look at our customers today, pre-Gen AI, right? Data security, getting your data house in order, it's always been critical. With the advent of Gen AI, it's become essential and very timely, right? So for companies to start leveraging all of these Gen AI use cases, there's a few key macro trends that are important to think about. One, companies are really starting to leverage proprietary data in their own company's proprietary data. And what's unique about this is it often contains sensitive information, classified information, PII. So if you want to leverage that for a Gen AI use case, you really got to make sure you're not putting anything bad into the model, because ultimately that's going to come back out. So that's one key factor. Another one is this use of unstructured data. So really taking center stage in this Gen AI revolution is unstructured data. And for those not familiar, structured data is everything: tables, schemas, formats, what you know about Snowflake, Databricks, stuff that we've worked with for years. Unstructured data is essentially everything else. It's over 90% of all available data, and that's things like video, audio, PowerPoint, really anything that's not in a nice table, schema, and format. And companies have never really leveraged unstructured data at this scale before. So they need to figure out how to discover it, extract it, bring that into AWS to run Gen AI use cases, and then you have a very fast-moving regulation discourse. But we'll pause there.
This is actually a very relevant topic. Our teams talk to customers almost every day, and this comes up now almost often, where it's not only about the visibility into the data sprawl and the data lineage, but now customers are also concerned about maintaining compliance, which has been a really key part of data residency and data governance strategy, which is we have compliances such as GDPR and CCPA, etc. So I'm assuming that solutions like this are preparing customers to be ready for that, and also adhering to those compliances.
Yeah, compliance is a major driver. GDPR has been around. It took about 10 years to fully develop. Everybody has to adhere to these things, and having a centralized data platform is essential to do that. You look at this Gen AI landscape, you have a very fast-moving regulatory environment. GDPR, like I said, took 10 years to fully pull together. The EU AI Act, which is just as comprehensive, came together in about 6 months. So companies are dealing with the data challenges that we just discussed. They're also dealing with a really, really fast-moving regulatory environment that they need to stay tied to.
So yeah, that's super interesting. I was just having a conversation about the EU AI Act just prior to this show, and so it's really interesting how quickly that has come together, has been operationalized. Are you seeing at the rate of acceleration compared to GDPR? Is that maturity level there where organizations are saying, "I get it, I understand it"? Like, I took the EU AI Act, I threw it into ChatGPT, I got it, or are they still ingesting, operationalizing, and building AI apps that are compliant?
It's definitely the latter, right? Fast-moving compliance, it's always a challenge, and you have to have a way to automate some of these behaviors, right? When we talk about all of these different data systems, all the different sources where this information is coming from, the idea that you're going to manually check all of these and run audits and attestations and understand if you're compliant with these, it's really challenging. So having a platform has a pulse on where all your data is, and then it ties right back to these frameworks is really important.
It sounds very powerful and very useful, Trevor. Is there something that you have to show that we can take a look at?
Pull up a slide.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so I think some of the things we just discussed, where you can visualize what customers are dealing with. We talked before, proprietary data, all of these different systems, unstructured data, all of these different systems and structured data as well. You want to leverage Gen AI, you have to find a way to discover where this data is, classify it, extract it, sanitize it, and bring it into AWS, bring it into Bedrock, right, to start driving a lot of these use cases. And it's not just Bedrock, right? It's all the models that AWS supports. So when you look at this environment, this idea of dealing with all of this data, operationalizing it, maintaining compliance, and then using that to drive different use cases, that's really the challenges that we're seeing and dealing with right now.
Very cool. And I'm assuming that discovery is one part of it, but that also enables customers to then easily act on that and apply the right data protection policies.
Absolutely. Yeah, so discovering the data is core, but it's not just enough to know where the data is. You have to know what's sensitive, what's classified. Entitlements are a major portion of it. If you think about an HR use case, and I can speak to this one because there is a large Fortune 5 bank currently dealing with this, but multiple iterations of trying to drive an internal HR chatbot. You're pulling data from dozens of different systems. Some of that data is old, some of it's redundant, and some of it shouldn't be accessed by different roles and different people. If you think about a VP of HR versus somebody working in a fulfillment center or a bank, when you query that system, you got to make sure that the right information is being responded to. So this getting your data house in order is really step one, and where we've taking that a little bit further is turning that into a data pipeline, which we can do as well.
I love that application. Just the concept of not just what is underneath my LLM and my generative AI environment, what data is it pulling from, but what data is going out, right? The OWASP top 10. Oh, is OWASP? Do I need to put a coin in the jar? I'm not sure if I'm allowed. If that one's stuck by.
Open web application.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the top 10 LLM vulnerabilities is data leakage, right? Which is terrifying. The idea that someone on the outside or maybe even on the inside is able to inject a query or do something, and then unfortunately it spits out PCI, there goes social security numbers. It is terrifying to think of these security vulnerabilities and not knowing what data is coming out of your environment, right?
100%. So there's the front end, right, of making sure that you're selecting the right data, but then there's the back end, right, making sure that the responses that come through, there's protections in place as well. You hear about things like prompt injection attacks and hallucinations and this data leakage, right? Any data that goes into these models is going to come out in some form or fashion. So you really want to have, some sort of roadblocks or firewalls, for lack of a better word, in place on both ends of this to address. And maybe if we pull up the second slide, we can talk through that as well.
It's up there.
It's already up there. So we can kind of visualize what we're seeing in, like I said, this iteration of customers. So you have this core data command center, builds a knowledge graph. You have all this context around your data. okay, now I got to bring that data into Amazon to leverage Bedrock or these different models that Amazon provides. There's a process, that data selection, that chunking, that indexing. You're also putting these into vector DBs, right? You're selecting from a variety of different models based on different use cases. And then there's also a need, like you said, on the back end, to have these contextual aware firewalls. So if everything else on the front didn't work, you're going to catch it on the back end with these retrieval firewalls and prompt injection firewalls.
So we're actually starting to see, I'm going to say it, defense in depth within generative AI environments.
That's exactly how we would describe it.
Hey, there we go. Where's my $5? I get paid for that, right?
This is actually very timely, because as customers now are adopting, generative AI and building applications, I think we're seeing a lot of demand from them. I think one of the key other factors that comes in is that post-discovery, they want to be able to make sure, as you mentioned, the data is actually not being misused in any way or shape or form. Most of the time, customers are concerned about intellectual property. Do you foresee a way to also then classify this data, or can you take existingly classified or classifiers into this graph pipeline?
Yeah, so really important call out, right? Entitlements is a word that you're going to hear a lot of it in Gen AI because you're pulling this data from systems all over the place. Sometimes this data has been stored for 10, 15 different years, and there's entitlements and controls in place. The second you take that data out of these different data systems and bring it into AWS, you lose all of that. It's the Wild West. So you have to have a way, like I said, through this process, through this pipeline, to maintain those data controls. So when you bring them into these Gen AI use cases, right, entitlements become sort of part of the answer.
That's great. And I want to say, we just had a conversation yesterday here at AWS reInvent around our customers' ability to prototype, successfully, really quickly prototype generative AI environments that never made it to production for the sole reason that they were not able to provide the security data governance on that environment, that application, into a production environment. And so it's really interesting to hear that the data governance is what is driving the adoption of production generative AI environments.
I mean, if you look at the industry, and we talk to customers about this every day. This is where we live. We also talk to AWS every day, so we're hearing this from them. And you can also look at any number of industry reports, right? Everybody is deploying Gen AI use cases. There's a lot of really exciting things happening, but a lot of that's usually happening on a curated data set, right? So you test it, you prove it out, you like it. The second you try to go take that to production, there's a whole host of concerns and issues. What companies are really realizing is, we got to get our data house in order before we can really do these things at scale. Data security and privacy is the #1 blocker to getting these POCs into production.
No, that's great, Trevor. One of the other things we hear from customers is, and this is something that AWS, helps customers as well, is the flexibility and the simplicity of things, right? So for a customer to get started, what are some of the key ways that they can get started? And then also, can they go and define some of these entitlements, like you mentioned, or classifiers themselves?
Yeah, so another big shift, right, in Gen AI is line of business users. This stuff isn't just being done by IT teams. You have people trying to drive business use cases and get business outcomes. They're not always keyed in to a lot of these privacy challenges. So when you think about a pipeline, right, or the usability of these things, I can say what we've developed. We don't want to get too pitchy here, but this Gen Core solution, it's a data pipeline. It allows you to go in as a simple UI, sort of a wizard that anybody can use, no coding skills required. You start to select your data sources. You define what you want to sanitize or mask, right? You pull that in, you can select vector DBs, you choose your model, and then you can put those prompt firewalls and those things in the back end. The whole idea is security by design. You talked about defense in depth, but how do we build a pipeline that brings this data into the clouds to leverage Gen AI use cases and do it securely and make sure it's operational and companies can do it easily.
That's super interesting to hear about the CI/CD pipeline in the context of building generative AI environments that are highly compliant, starting with a strong security data governance policy, right? That then is built into the pipeline itself, so that you are confident that your application is going to be secure in production. That's incredible. So all of our listeners out there, quick hard plug from the AWS guy. If you are out there and you're having troubles launching something into production, it sounds like there are partners that are able to help you with these challenges, especially starting with that data sovereignty or data policy challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we said we're hearing it, AWS is hearing it, and we're seeing the investment from AWS in the ecosystem. And it's not just in the ISVs that are trying to solve for this, it's the Cloud SI ecosystem, right? The partners, not your typical big GSIs who are obviously very involved, but there's tons of resources springing up in this AWS partner ecosystem to address these challenges, and we're seeing the impact, and we're excited to help kind of deliver on those.
And with all things security, I think this is where the paradigm comes in, is that like how Gen AI is actually empowering some of these security use cases. I'm assuming that even in your solution, which is actually there to help have the appropriate guardrails and the data governance and the entitlement, there is going to be at some point where there are features that'll automate and or shorten the time that customers need by providing some Gen AI powered features within the service itself.
And that's actually already happening, right? We have to be innovating on our own in our own platform, but if you think about the classification, right? Imagine trying to manually do this, or even with a system, trying to create all these tags. So, the solutions used a version of machine learning to do these things in the past, but we've now started to deploy LLM models to actually get this contextual intelligence, the data within the platform, so it becomes part of the answer as well.
That's incredible. So we're using generative AI in order to make generative AI.
Very meta.
It's so meta. It's so meta. Like my head is gonna explode. My glasses are gonna fly off. I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great example of like enabling the technology usage and the technology adoption by leveraging that technology. And I think we get to hear from customers all the time, like hey, what are some of the good use cases of leveraging generative AI in production? And I think this is a great example of how you've actually developed this technology using foundational models and large language models to actually help the adoption of generative AI.
Yeah, it's really exciting, right? I've been in this line of work for a number of years now, and I think everybody sees the potential of Gen AI, and we're in the first half of the first inning, but there's still a lot of question marks, and addressing this security piece is going to be massive in order to continue to scale and operationalize these things. And like I said, the earliest innings of this innovation, but I think we're solving for a really core need right now.
Yeah, and this also enables customers to easily orchestrate security policies using key management service, using Secrets Manager, I'm assuming. And you mentioned one of the things like data masking and anonymization. These are very hard problems, especially to solve at scale. How is some of that being done? Is that automated in your?
That's part of the machine learning and the new LLM in the platform. Leveraging this automation, these things can't be done on their own. So that's a huge part of it.
Awesome. And I'm assuming when it comes to security policies, there's flexibility for customers to choose how they want to encrypt the data. Absolutely. Where do they want to bring the keys from, right? If it's like the AWS key management service, or they might be using HSMs, hardware security modules, etc.
Yeah, tons of flexibility within the platform, and we operate with a hybrid architecture. So we're deploying pods into customers' environments. The data never leaves, which is critical, especially when you're working with Fortune 500 companies. But a lot of flexibility in the deployment, how you operationalize this, and how you take advantage of it.
So I'm curious, from an industry lens, are there industries that you are seeing are leveraging this type of tooling and getting to production faster than other industries? Like, where is this really taking off?
So there's definitely an industry lens. As a company, we've always had a really strong focus in financial services, but we operate across the board. I mean, you could look through the list of Fortune 500, you'll find a customer of ours in virtually every vertical. But I think every company is pushing the limits of what they can do. What we are seeing in the early innings, right, is a lot of customer service use cases, even if you're a financial services company, right? And now you're seeing the testing in the POCs around some of these more complex ones, the stuff that's really going to be transformative. But it keeps coming back to question one. We've got to get our data house in order before we really take this stuff to scale.
No, I think any industry that has intellectual property, I would see will be a good fit. But like you said, more regulated industries like financial services are definitely the ones taking the lead.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, we are just at time, and I just want to thank Trevor so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and that's it for this show. Thank you again.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.